What's up, guys? Welcome to Lawsplaining the Interwebs. I am your randomly appearing and disappearing host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, owner of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota, as you probably know. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. The stream that is... the chat is not working. The chat isn't working. Give me just a second, guys. I've got the... I just got to change one thing here. We'll get the chat. Aha! Ha! I have conquered technology. I've conquered them. Whatever it is. So the chat should be up on your screen now. So yeah, it's 4:20, y'all. It is 4:20. So it is time to talk about weed. And when you immediately got to address a dumb comment in the chat. You think this isn't a Commerce Clause stream? Of course it's a Commerce Clause stream. It involves pot. Pot is commerce. How do you think they regulate marijuana? They regulate it through the Commerce Clause. Amy Schumer wants to legalize pot. So yes, if you'll notice, the large script article, whatever you want to call it, to the side of me over here, which is reverse from where it is in my perspective, you will notice that Schumer, in this case, Chuck Schumer, esteemed uncle of horrifically terrible comedian, if you can even call it that, Amy Schumer, is introducing a bill this coming week to decriminalize marijuana. And we should all rejoice, except we actually shouldn't, because decriminalization is not what we want. It's not what anybody wants. It's a buzzword. Decriminalization is not the legalization of marijuana. And at this point in time, legalization of marijuana is the only thing that makes sense from a freedom perspective, from a policy perspective, from a policing perspective, from a please stop shooting the citizens perspective. Legalization of marijuana needs to happen, not decriminalization. We will talk about that in a few minutes. But now that my blood pressure is starting to rise, let's get some housekeeping in order. I am going to poorly attempt to keep on some sort of schedule or pace in this stream, and it is likely going to fail. I'm going to try and start with kind of a history of marijuana laws, which I don't have, I don't have a ton of, I don't really have much in the way of documents to show you on the history of marijuana laws. Like, I can pull up court cases, but they're long, and I don't want to sit and like read through a court case document in this live stream, because I don't think you guys care about that so much here. Like, reading Supreme Court decisions is something that you typically pay a bunch of money to do in law school. But it's not what people tend to want to see as far as, the, whatchamacallit? It's not what people want to see as far as, just kind of summarizing what's going on and ranting about the law. So I'm not going to pull up much documentation on it, but we're going to talk about it. But since I have documentation here, it's just going to sit there and look pretty. As far as the sort of form here, as always, there are two ways to contact me. The first one is via Super Chat, and I really appreciate any Super Chats that you guys want to give me, and I will address them immediately. If you do send a Super Chat, or as soon as I can finish a thought and get onto it. So feel free to ask any question or make any comment via Super Chat. That is, however, not the only way to get my attention. You can also, if you do not wish to super chat, just tag me. Yes, the relation to Amy Schumer is Chuck Schumer is her uncle. They are also both dirtbags, so I guess they're related that way. But you can at me in the chat, at Rekieta Law, and I would be happy to answer your question if I find it, answerable or interesting. But again, as Keck7Go has demonstrated, if you super chat, I am almost obliged out of respect for what you've done to answer your question. So Keck says, if pot is legal, how will private prisons profit? I don't know, but we can talk about private prisons too. I'm a capitalist, buddy. All those GD rat babies. Rat babies? Are you talking about the Schumers? That's from Rick Karst. I'm not sure if he's talking about Chuck and Amy Schumer, but I have to assume he is since he mentioned rat babies. I'm not opening the floodgates. Oh, Tillip says, I'll smoke one weed for every like this video gets. So definitely try and kill Tillip with a weed overdose, even though it is likely impossible as far as smoking goes. Where is my glass? Aha. Okay, guys, so something has happened since the start of this channel, and I want to catalog it here. I have gotten wonderful, like this Rekieta Law whiskey glass, which I got from a viewer. I got these Norland glasses from my parents, which is awesome. I got these distillery glasses when I got a bunch of whiskey at a charity auction. But something has not made an appearance in a long time, and that is my original Rekieta Law glass, which is much larger than the whiskey glasses. It was given to me by Lady Rackets, and it is making a return today, so it will be a glorious, glorious evening. D. Dotson45 says, how much weed would you need to make an Amy Schumer comedy special funny? More than can be smoked, for sure. I think you'd have to go with binging the edibles to do that, which, as a lawyer, I do not recommend binging edibles or consuming marijuana in any fashion. Don't do it until it's legal, which it's a matter of time. Let's see. What should I drink tonight? I think I'm going to start with this North Dakota Select Club whiskey. It says it's North Dakota, but it's also a Canadian whiskey. So it apologized for the mislabeling. So here we go. So I'm guessing this is an irresponsible drinking habit, and which is not endorsed by any whiskey company I have ever talked to. So definitely also don't follow my drinking habits, apparently. Kill Tillip by weed OD challenge accepted. Yes. Yes. So I haven't drank whiskey from a full-size glass in a while, but the amount of whiskey that you get per sip is great. I need a locally distilled drink. I do. So, let's get rolling here. I guess. There's all sorts of big news. Today. Barbara Bush died, which I guess people are sad about, and then other people aren't sad about, and I am indifferent because just a person, first lady or not, just a person, so who cares? Let's see. What else has happened? Oh, the DNC is suing Donald Trump, and I think just about everybody else. So, upcoming, make sure you stay tuned because I will have videos on the DNC lawsuit coming out. My initial gut reactions, and I have read zero of it. I'm sure many of you have read more about it than I have. But my gut reaction on the DNC lawsuit is it looks like a fishing expedition to try and get some stuff through discovery about to try and get some stuff from about Trump through discovery because the feds. I don't know if the other news that didn't get much press, but it was out there, is that Rod Rosenstein, Assistant Attorney General, second to Jeff Sessions, who has recused himself from the Mueller investigation. Rod Rosenstein specifically told Donald Trump that he is not the subject of the investigation of Mueller at this point. Mueller is not investigating Donald Trump as a target, which this does not mean that Donald Trump will not end up being the investigative target of Mueller. What it does mean is that what I've been saying for a while is they don't have evidence of the collusion that they keep talking about. They don't have it. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It doesn't mean anything other than this story is going to get drugged past the midterm elections. They're going to see if Democrats take the House or Senate or both, and then they'll have to make their decision for impeachment, because right now with Republican majorities, they're not going to impeach Donald Trump and throw him out of office. It's just not going to happen. It would be a disaster for the Republican Party to do it, whether you think he should be impeached or not. But if Rod Rosenstein says Mueller's not investigating Trump, then they're not actively trying to get documents to show Trump's collusion. So what the DNC is probably trying to do is to sue, collect some documents through the subpoena process, through discovery, and try and get those documents to show some sort of collusion and carry on this whole thing. But, you know, we will see. I will be covering that lawsuit. Also, collusion is not actually illegal. Yes, thank you. Thank you for recognizing that. Collusion is not illegal. It's not a defined thing in federal election law. Collusion is a, it's like a RICO racketeering sort of claim and money laundering sort of claim. But it is not. It's not a federal election claim. It's a buzzword used by the media to describe something that they don't know but just don't feel right about. So there's that. Other news, it appears Taylor Swift is being sued by Russell Greer. I can't confirm it 100%, but if he sues her, I will definitely cover that. Also, big potential update in the Google lawsuit, and I'm sorry I'm previewing all the stuff that's coming out, but now seems like a good time to do it. The Google lawsuit, James Damore has filed his first amended complaint, and I have not read it yet. No time for any of this stuff. I've not read it yet, but I hear it has some juicy new evidence that we will be covering as soon as I can get around to it on the channel. Pony Cordero says, collusion will get you kicked out of a children's card game tournament. Yes. I assume you're talking about like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Do not collude in those tournaments. How dare you cheat? Or collude. I don't even know if it's cheating, but don't do it. Don't do it. What's a Russell Greer? Russell Greer is a guy who might be suing Taylor Swift. But we'll be talking about that soon. And of course, if big news for me personally on this channel is I was able to appear on Anthony Fantano's show today, and he interviewed me about the Poppy lawsuit. This would be Mars Argo versus Titanic Sinclair and Poppy/that Poppy. And I realized that my name is not interesting enough and needs to be redone. So I will be going by Nick Rackets. But there's a lawsuit again between those parties, and I have covered it on my channel and will continue to do so as it develops. It seems pretty interesting. It's kind of a novel copyright lawsuit. It involves some pretty big people, and the outcomes, they're potentially very interesting. And it's got just enough emotion and flaming communities back and forth to carry some lawsuit-esque drama. And who doesn't love drama? All sorts of other stuff that could be coming out on the horizon as well. But trying to keep up with all of it is great fun, difficult to do. But, we'll see. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. On to marijuana. So, marijuana. Where do we begin? So marijuana has been around for a very long time. Marijuana has been around since the founding of our country. Let's see. I mean, there's talk of George Washington in some of his letters to his groundskeeper growing marijuana, or growing hemp on his property. Hemp being, of course, a whatchamacallit, a relative species of the cannabis set of species, plant species. What am I, a botanist? It's a relative plant. It contains a similar substance called THC. At the time, up until really the first third of the 1900s, they didn't know that THC was the chemical that caused the drug aspects of marijuana. So hemp was regarded in the same light as other cannabis plants that were used to get high, because it did have, it's from the same species. It's got the same characteristics. It doesn't have as much THC, but they didn't know what actually caused it. So we'll talk about Minnesota medical marijuana too in just a little bit. But so long story short, pot has been around for a very, 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 very long time. It has been around in the United States from basically the beginning. And at first it was a recreational drug that was used. It wasn't criminalized until, really in the early 1900s, we'll say, is when the criminalization started. But it really didn't get strongly criminalized until the mid 1900s. It's a cannabinoid. So, yeah. So the long and short of that is that, again, pot has been around for a very long time. It was recreationally used. It was used without much other than any sort of social stigma that would be attached to the use of anything like alcohol or cocaine or heroin or opium. Well, opium, heroin wouldn't have been around back then. It was, opium was a little bit more common. Hashish, these sorts of things they might have carried a social stigma, but they didn't carry a legal stigma. They also did have pharmaceutical purposes and were used up until really the early 1900s. So then, of course, the government decides that marijuana is starting to become a problem. Why? Who knows? Some people believe that it has to do with hemp's potential to compete with wood for paper. And some people have alleged that William Hearst, infamous newspaper publisher William Hearst, was involved in that. Other people dispute that involvement. I'm not here to resolve the issue. From what I was reading about it, hemp is not the greatest, upon later findings, hemp does not make a great paper product because the process of creating the pulp is harder with hemp than it is with wood, and it doesn't really work out very well. But who knows? Who cares? Who cares the reason that it was initially wasn't criminalized? It was initially taxed. This is how the government dealt with things before. How they still deal with things now, of course. If they don't like it, they can tax it into oblivion. But this was truly taxed at a massive amount, to the point where many people would suggest that it was effectively illegal, just due to the amount of tax that had to be paid. And it could be, Corolla says others think it's between a dispute because of a dispute between tobacco and hemp, which is absolutely possible. I don't have the background knowledge to talk about what led to the illegalization. Typically, there are particular interests that were involved, but I think ultimately we can tell where the blame lies in all of this. The blame is always government needs to govern. Government is an entity that exists to do stuff, even when it's created to not do stuff, as with our federal government was created to do things very slowly, if at all. Once you get people in power, you want to grow government, you want to create government programs, and that's what happened, man. They started creating these government entities, and these departments, and these departments needed to regulate things, and you have to find new demons to regulate all the time. But basically, really, I guess things kind of started in the 30s. We need the weed to open the skitter gate. It really started in the 30s with the Marijuana Tax Act. That's what I was talking about earlier. It became very expensive. I have some numbers for you that are inflation-adjusted numbers. Now, guys, my source on this is Wikipedia. I don't... Researching marijuana laws, like the specific laws, gets really horrific. Going through like the legal channels. Wikipedia has a great history of cannabis in the United States, and they kind of have a very good timeline, and I'm going to give just sort of a peek at parts of that timeline because I'm not going to just plagiarize their whole thing, but it's very thorough, and you should check it out if you really want to learn a lot about the progression of laws on marijuana in the United States. So, but to give you an idea, the Marijuana Tax Act was from 1937. FDR, the best president in history, FDR. Just remember that, y'all. FDR. He brought us so many good things. So in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act effectively made possession or transfer of marijuana illegal throughout the United States under federal law, excluding medical and industrial uses through imposition of an excise tax on the sales of hemp. Excise taxes are just extra taxes on specific goods. Your alcohol has an excise tax on it. Your gas has an excise tax on it. It's what makes them expensive. The market does not. Markets make things cheap. Governments make things expensive. Next thing you know, you're sitting around doing absolutely nothing, talking about how high you are when you could be going insane on vodka and getting into dumb stuff. Yeah, there you go. And to be clear, since Max has suggested I take or hit or pass the blunt, I do not partake in marijuana personally. I have no personal interest in it being legalized. I don't care from a usage perspective. I am a member of the bar, and I don't tend to engage in criminal activity. So I don't actually use marijuana. I don't care who does. Go for it. All you want. Not legal advice. Legally, don't do it at all because breaking the law. But if you're going to do it, I'm not going to stop you. And if you get caught, I'll defend you in court. Good job. Go me. I'm a hero. Annual fees were $24, which comes out to $637 adjusted for inflation for importers, manufacturers, and cultivators of cannabis. $1 or $24 adjusted for inflation for medical and research purposes, and $82 adjusted for inflation for industrial users. Detailed sales logs were required to record marijuana sales. Selling marijuana to any person who had previously paid the annual fee incurred a tax of $1 per ounce or fraction thereof, which again was $24. So that'd be a $24 today per ounce fee. However, the tax was $100 or $2,206 adjusted for inflation per ounce or fraction thereof to sell to any person who had not registered and paid the annual fee. So if you just wanted to go and buy marijuana like on a one-time thing, there was a tax which would amount to $2,200 in today's dollars. Are you saying if you break the law, it's okay as long as you look cool as F? Pretty much. Everybody breaks the law all the time in various ways. So you won't get condemnation from me for breaking any particular law. you'll just get my advice not to do it. And if you do it, your advice, of course, is to call me or contact an attorney who can help you out of that situation. So yeah, the Taxation Act made it very expensive to sell marijuana to people. It made it very expensive to grow and cultivate, and it made it burdensome to even go through the process. So, you know, that's how it gets started. It starts with a tax. Then we started to get actual criminal sanctions or criminal charges for marijuana, and we moved into something called mandatory sentencing. Mandatory sentencing initially made acts of first-time cannabis possession minimum of 2 to 10 years, probably depending on the amount, with a fine of up to $20,000. But then in 1970, Congress repealed the mandatory penalties for cannabis offenses. And that would last until Ronald Reagan, when we would get Congress and Reagan bringing mandatory sentencing back. What am I reading from? I mentioned earlier, I'm reading from the Wikipedia article on the history of marijuana laws. So again, this is what we're going with here. I don't have it pulled up because, one, it's a Wikipedia article and it's very long, and I'm just pulling out specific parts to kind of get a framework for where these laws are. And then we're gonna transition away from this history and talk about today's stuff pretty soon. But 1970, Congress passes the Controlled Substances Act. And the Controlled Substances Act is the all-encompassing act for controlled substances. Go figure. It is how the federal government defines basically all controlled substances, including prescription drugs on up to your hardcore hallucinogenic drugs, of which marijuana is a class 1 prescription drug, which is the same as like heroin, acid, everything else. Oh, you're focused on trying to smoke out tulip. Yes. It's the act which the federal government uses to define all controlled substances and the penalties thereof under federal law. They passed this act under the Commerce Clause. If you don't know what the Commerce Clause is, it is in Article 1 of the Constitution. It is where the founders granted Congress the authority to regulate interstate commerce. And that is the end of the Commerce Clause. What it has meant since a bunch of Supreme Court justices turned into absolute lunatics and applied it to literally everything, it means that Congress has the power to regulate everything. It was originally intended to prevent states from like putting on, we'll say, some massive tax on importation from a particular state. Reminder that at the founding of our country, we were more like a European Union sort of setup, where you would have people where the states were nations. They were sovereign, they had their own authority, and their governments were sovereign, and they had an agreement to be a part of the United States. And they reserved most of their rights to themselves, and the federal government had much less power than it does today. As such, those states would have very nationalistic populations, largely consisting of people from similar, we'll say, nations of origin in their immigrant status. So you'd have some states being primarily German, some states being primarily Irish, etc., etc. Probably not Irish, but you get the idea. The regions that they came from would tend to dominate the state, and they would go to be with people who spoke their same language, their same native language, and people who have similar religions. Most of the states had mandatory religions. I think 12 of the original 13 states had mandated religions, the only one being Rhode Island, being the lone exception. So these populations would be very much closer than they are today. Think of Texas on steroids, and more importantly, think of Texans, not just Texas the state, but the residents of Texas and the pride that they have in their state. Think of that on a every state level, and then probably amplified. So some of these states would do things like put a massive tax on the import, or try and tax people for crossing into their borders or for passing through their state, even if they weren't going to do business within the state. If you're going to carry something across one state into another, you might have an import and export tax at both borders. And so the founders gave Congress the ability to say no to that, to make laws regulating interstate commerce and to make it uniform, because the idea was that we were a union of states, not individual states anymore. And so they wanted to foster trade and travel and all that stuff. That's the Commerce Clause's intent. But under people like FDR, again, scum of the earth, can't even stand up, terrible human being. Under people like him, we took the Commerce Clause and decided that it applied to basically whatever they wanted it to apply to. Anything that can be bought or sold can be regulated by the Commerce Clause, no matter if it is bought or sold, no matter if it's bought or sold within the borders of a state, or if it's sold in a different state. It doesn't matter. Interstate commerce, even if the particular item is never intended to be bought or sold, it still falls under interstate commerce if someone else could produce it and sell it. And that is one of the worst decisions in Supreme Court history, and that's Wickard versus Filburn. And if you guys know Raphael Gallagher, you definitely need to bring up Wickard versus Filburn for him at any point. He loves it. It's his favorite Supreme Court decision. He fully supports Wickard versus Filburn, so give him a hard time about it. I'll get to Reich v. Gonzalez, which, of course, cites Wickard versus Filburn. But let's talk about Wickard versus Filburn, because now I'm on a Commerce Clause thing. So to give you context of what Wickard versus Filburn is, it establishes something called the Dormant Commerce Clause. And if you are fans of Obamacare, know that Congress passed Obamacare intending it to utilize the Dormant Commerce Clause as its congressional authority, or its constitutional authority to regulate healthcare. They tried to use Wickard versus Filburn and the Dormant Commerce Clause to do so. Now, what Wickard versus Filburn was in 1929, the United States government thought the price of wheat was too low, and wheat farmers were not going to be able to make money by growing and harvesting wheat because supply was high. And anyone who's taken an economics class knows that if supply is high and demand is not matching that supply, then you've got a low price situation. So in an effort to suppress supply and therefore bring supply down while keeping demand the same, Congress enacted a regulation on the production of wheat. People were limited in how much wheat they could produce. I think they could grow like 1,000 bushels or something like that. And growing beyond that, and don't quote me, I'm flying completely off the cuff here in my memory, but going beyond that regulated amount of wheat that you could grow was an extra tax. So this guy, farmer, because who wasn't a farmer in 1929? Just kidding, a lot of people, but this guy said, I'm going to grow my government-approved amount of wheat to sell, right? And then I'm going to grow wheat to feed to my cattle, to maybe store for, to preserve for winter food or grind some into flour for my own personal use. But I'm going to use this wheat, this extra wheat. I'm not going to sell it to anybody. It won't enter commerce at all. And the Supreme Court comes in and in their infinite wisdom says, no. The very act of you growing that wheat and not means that you won't have to purchase it from someone else. So you are engaging in interstate commerce by not engaging in commerce. That's the Dormant Commerce Clause. It is the stupidest decision I can think of as far as constitutional authority goes, right? We've got some bad decisions involving race. When you have scumbags like FDR in office, you've got the incarceration of the Japanese based on nothing more than being Japanese into prison camps, because again, the man was just a saint. But when you've got people like him in office, you get terrible decisions like Korematsu, And Wickard versus Filburn, I believe, was decided while FDR was in office. So again, good job, FDR. Okay, so that's the Commerce Clause. So since growing something to sell or growing something to not sell constitutes commerce, Congress, under the Controlled Substances Act, has the power to regulate marijuana. That's how we get there. I apologize for the giant tangent. Gatscat says, if I get high legally in Canada and the smoke blows over the border and that smoke gives someone on the other side a contact high, am I a drug pusher? Yes, you are an international drug cartel, and you should probably be... well, I think Obama would sell guns to you. I think that's how that goes. Buck v. Bell. I'm not familiar off the top of my head, so I'm not going to get into that. But so the Controlled Substances Act is how Congress really started regulating all of the controlled substances, and it's the same basic structure that we have today, remains largely unchanged. So at the federal level, marijuana is a Class 1, Class A controlled substance, or Schedule 1 controlled substance. It means it's the same as heroin, same as acid. It is considered among the worst of the worst drugs, the highest potential for addiction, the highest potential for hallucinogenic properties, and the highest potential for, like causing violence or causing other sorts of death. Of course, if you do literally any research on marijuana, you will find that it is not actually, it doesn't fit into any of those categories. The medical research is fairly clear that it does not have physical withdrawal symptoms. It is psychologically abusable. However, so is everything, right? There are people who eat toilet paper. Everything is psychologically abusable at some point. But marijuana is far from the risk that it has been painted to be for a long time. So then under Reagan, of course, which 1970 is the Controlled Substances Act, and then under Reagan, who was a very tough on crime candidate for all of his good things. Reagan was not a perfect president by any means, and his tough on crime stance brought back mandatory minimum sentences and the 3-strike rule. And what are mandatory minimum sentences? Well, my friend, is toilet paper a Schedule 1 controlled substance? I think it's Schedule 2. Mandatory minimum sentences are this great concept that the government had, and that the Supreme Court, in its just shockingly consistent display of wisdom, has decided is okay. Is this idea that if a person is found to have committed certain acts or a certain fact pattern, then we should impose a mandatory sentence and take any sentencing consideration away from the judge, except for to start here and go up. All right. So if you don't know, judges have broad leeway to impose sentences outside of any specific statutory imposition of sentencing guidelines. They can impose very flexible sentences. They don't have to be a particular length for most things. What we do know is that a felony has to be a year or more in prison. A misdemeanor, a gross misdemeanor would be typically 90 days up to a year. A misdemeanor is typically 0 to 90 days in prison. And a petty misdemeanor, at least in Minnesota, typically is no time in prison. System of a Down taught me about mandatory minimum sentences. Yes. What is it? All something in successful drug policy shows their treatment to be increased. Oh, while abolishing mandatory minimum sentences. Right? Good song. All research on successful drug policy. They're trying to build a prison. So thanks for taking me back, Pony. I really appreciate that. I love the prison song. I really do. System's a good band. So my brain's breaking. Where was I? So yes, outside of those sort of general sentencing guidelines, judges are very free to amend things. And to give you like reference on how this looks, I had a client who was charged with felony, who was charged with felony receipt of stolen property. Okay, felony receipt of stolen property, faced under the charge, faced 3+ years in prison. And she was able to plead guilty, and we were able to get that plea down to a misdemeanor because the judge had the authority to reduce the felony charge to a misdemeanor. The ultimate defense in that case was that my client was extremely naive, was duped by a love interest, and this is, I mean, honestly, like, this is the truth of what happened, was duped by a love interest into he had stolen some stuff and given it to my client and asked that my client sell this property at, at some pawn shops. And so the story he told my client was convincing to her, and she was technically guilty of receipt of stolen property because the law in Minnesota is that if you know, or a reasonable person would know, that the property is stolen, then that's the standard of guilt. So my client ended up pleading guilty to that, but the judge was able to reduce it from a felony to a misdemeanor based on, the factors of, my client maybe should have known technically under the law, but it doesn't seem like she had any idea that what she was doing was illegal. And it turns out that the boyfriend was actually just a huge dirtbag, and and that's who the state was more interested in taking down. So the judge was able to turn what would have literally ruined my client's career choice. Her career choice was a type of career where a felony would stop it. There would be no ability to enter into that field with a felony charge. We got it reduced to a misdemeanor. There's no jail time involved. It was all it made a lot of sense to do this sentence, okay? And it was very good for my client. Under mandatory minimum sentencing, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I do have a document that I'll bring up to talk about mainly for the cameo in it. Oh, where is it? Is this it? No. Hold on. Did I not print it? Oh my gosh, I didn't. Here we go. Let me hold on, guys, 1 second. I've got it. Print. What does this have to do with Amy Schumer? She's fat, so she encompasses all things and attempts to ingest all of them too. Okay. Bear with me here. I'm pulling this up. So this is an article. It's from the New York Times, outrageous sentences for marijuana. And it's not a great article in the sense that they get some basic things wrong, but I want to bring in the cameo. So let me start reading this real quick. No, it's a cameo by a politician. Lee Carroll Brooker, a 75-year-old disabled veteran suffering from chronic pain. So, of course, they have the sympathy angle down. Was arrested in July 2011 for growing 36 marijuana plants for his own medicinal use behind his son's house in Dothan, Alabama, where he lived. Alabama, that's an idea of where this is going. That's a hint at the cameo. For this crime, Mr. Brooker was given a life sentence with no possibility of release. Guys, 36 plants. 36 marijuana plants. And it says in just a minute, the total weight of all of the plants, including vines and stalks and everything else, is 2.8 pounds. The total weight, not the smokable amount. Anyway. Alabama law mandates that anyone with a certain prior felony convictions be sentenced to life without parole for possession of more than 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds of marijuana, regardless of intent to sell. Mr. Brooker had been convicted of armed robberies in Florida 2 decades earlier, for which he served 10 years in prison. The marijuana plants collected at his son's house, including unusable parts like vines and stalks, weighed 2.8 pounds. 3 doesn't seems a bit much, but it seems a bit much compared to what? Like, I mean, compared to 1, sure. For personal use, maybe. But here's the thing. Where's the harm? Who's he hurting by growing 3 dozen plants? Even if he's selling marijuana, if he's not price gouging people, the overall health impacts of marijuana are lower than many commonly sold items, like this one. At his sentencing, trial judge told Mr. Brooker that if he, quote, could sentence you to a term that is less than life without parole, die in prison. Remember, die in prison. I would. Last year, Roy Moore, Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court, called Mr. Brooker's sentence excessive and unjustified. This was before Roy Moore was an enemy of the media state, and said it revealed grave flaws in the state's sentencing laws, but the court still upheld the punishment. And Corollas, for personal use, 36 plants sounds like a lot. It sounds like they were pretty small. He must have not been growing them. I mean, 2.8 pounds isn't very much weight, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't grow pot. I don't know if that's a lot or not. But it's not 2.8 pounds of marijuana. It's less than a kilogram of usable marijuana. I don't know how often it reproduces, like how renewable it is, either, like how fast you can harvest. So, on Friday, the United States Supreme Court will consider whether to hear Mr. Brooker's challenge to his sentence, which he argues violates the 8th Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishments. Pro tip. It doesn't. It doesn't. He's hurting the environment by planting an aggressive and invasive species. The punishment is death. Can a judge refuse to issue such a sentence? No. No, they cannot. That's the beauty of mandatory minimum sentences. So what I was getting at before was judges have thank you for keeping me on focus. Judges, oh my goodness, guys. Judges have broad discretion in how they implement sentencing, what factors they choose. Actually, like some of the things that people like me as attorneys hate about sentencing is that judges are allowed to consider things outside of the rules of evidence in their sentencing. They can consider hearsay. They can consider the attitude or character of a person, even if character wasn't raised properly in trial. They can consider these things when they do sentencing. If you remember the sovereign citizen stream, one of the sovereign citizens was complaining that his sentence was too harsh because the judge gave him the maximum sentence on a first offense and basically stated it's because you're a giant idiot. He said that wasn't right, but the court upheld that sentence and said, look, judges can consider whether you believe that the criminal justice system has authority or not. And if you don't, they can impose a harsher sentence to make you understand that they do. So they do have this broad leeway in applying the sentencing as long as it's within the statutory guidelines. Mandatory minimum sentences do not allow them to go down from the minimum. So in this case, his amount of marijuana and his previous situation as being a convicted felon means that he's done. Life without parole. There you go. Crimes they were acquitted of. I'm not sure exactly what you mean crimes they were acquitted of. If they're not found guilty of a crime, then mandatory minimum sentencing, doesn't come into play, if that's what you're talking about. Doesn't punishing someone for being a dick violate the First Amendment? No. Convicting someone for being a dick violates the First Amendment. Punishing someone more harshly than someone who is not acting in that way is not a violation of the First Amendment, according to everybody in sentencing. Yes. If they have a pattern of arrest, but not convictions, yeah, the judge can consider that. And let's be real. I mean, they're going to anyway. They're human. They're going to consider all these. Are there any arguments for mandatory minimums? I mean, if we re-legalize executions, and you want to say if you murder someone in the first degree, then you get mandatory execution, I guess. I don't know. I don't have a good argument for it. I don't think taking away judges' authority on the minimum end is a good plan. I think maybe a mandatory maximum sentence would be good, where a judge can't go higher than that. That might be more reasonable. But as a person who values freedom over most anything else in the legal world, I can't think of a good argument for a mandatory deprivation of freedom. Marijuana growing techniques and quality have increased a lot as well. What we are used to seeing these days is likely bigger buds and higher quality plants than how it was back then. Cool. In this life without parole case, it's both a mandatory minimum and a mandatory maximum. Judge couldn't go up either, right? Right. Like, he can't impose a death penalty. Using acquitted conduct as a basis for increasing sentencing. Yes. Yeah. If they can consider pretty much anything. And the main reason judges can consider anything is because it'd be very hard to consider, to limit their consideration. Like, from a practical standpoint, the only way you'd know what they were considering is if they said it. But judges are given broad leeway and lots of deference by appellate courts. Could I technically sue a dog? I hope so. I'm from Canada. What is this freedom of which you speak? Here, Clay, this is for you, buddy. I'm assuming the argument for mandatory minimums is for the legislature to protect the public from activist judges. I'm also against them. I mean, maybe. I think the argument for mandatory minimum sentences is that tough on crime candidates do well. That's the real argument. And so if you don't know, I teach a Constitution class at our homeschool cooperative to high schoolers. And I was ranting about Congresses in general the other day. And take anything that Congress does and frame it immediately through this lens. This is not a question. This does increase whoever is proposing its perception that they will remain in power. Every single thing. No matter what, I don't care what it is. That's the goal, is to remain in power. If Congress is passing laws to be tougher on various criminal acts, it's because they think it will keep them in power. I don't believe anymore that Congress people have the ability to be empathetic, and I don't believe that they're human. Could you go into detail about drug paraphernalia? What makes a water pipe for tobacco use only legal versus a bong for weed, which is illegal? Ryan Heichman, that's a good question. It's a very good question. What makes it legal versus a bong for weed illegal? I don't know. Probably the mood of the officer. I don't think there's an objective standard for it. Yeah. Sorry, buddy. I don't have a good answer for you at all. Can we use the fact that judges are old, grumpy a-holes to overturn their decisions? Nope. You cannot. Just a second. Okay. Sorry. Lady Rackets was talking to me, and I had to make sure it wasn't some sort of emergency. So, yeah. Outrageous sentences for marijuana. Of course, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Doesn't really matter. The thing that they get wrong here is they, oh, excuse me. Let me be fair. Let me be fair to the article and I guess deference. So they say life without parole, second only to the death penalty in severity, should never be a mandatory sentence for any crime. I agree. Much less for simple possession of marijuana. But he wasn't simply possessing marijuana. He was cultivating marijuana, and that is distinctly different from simple possession. So let's be fair and deferential where we need to be as well. And as objective as possible, which is not very objective. But so he was not guilty of simple possession of marijuana. He was likely not convicted of simple possession. Although it does say, I think, that possessing more than 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds of marijuana regardless of intent to sell, is the statute. But, you know, he is cultivating marijuana. There is a difference there. Absolutely. I'm getting to Reich. I'm getting to it. Is there a legal system where a judge sentencing is based off people claiming harm, not talking civil court? Yes. I mean, all of it. So at sentencing, at Minnesota here, okay? At sentencing in Minnesota, both the defendant or the guilty party, the guilty party has a right to have someone speak on his or her behalf, to say whatever they want to the court. And then the victim has a right to speak to the court as well. And the judge can consider the victim's words in his sentencing. Absolutely. Absolutely. And trust me, that can be devastating. Depending on the crime, depending on the victim, and depending on the victim's ability to speak. And the victim themselves does not have to speak, but a spokesperson for the victim, you know, a friend or family member, can certainly speak on their behalf. Cultivation of a natural plant. Yes, cultivation of a natural plant. Now, what I do want to ask, is there an unnatural plant? So here we go. Okay, where were we? So we're still at mandatory minimum sentences. That was a nice tangent. I don't know if it was a nice tangent. It was a tangent. That was a tangent that occurred. After mandatory minimum sentences, you know, we have a bunch of stuff that happens. And we do get to Gonzalez v. Reich. It is mentioned in Reich, whatever it's called. This is a 2005 decision of the Supreme Court. Can they speak in the form of rock opera? Dude. Oh, I wish. I hope so. Maybe. I think depending on the severity of the crime, like if it was a rape case, the court would probably let them do whatever they want. Gonzalez v. Reich is mentioned in the Wikipedia article, and I'm going to talk about it outside of the Wikipedia article. Drink for lies. Given the amount of selective breeding and gene manipulation involved in modern farming, there is an unnatural plant in a sense. Sure. A good example of unnatural vegetable is Terry Schiavo. Oh! Dude. Our soybeans are not natural. Well, are our soy boys natural? That's the real question. So guys, it is the end of an era. Not really. It's just the end of a bottle. Don't spaz out me. But I finished off this 15-year Balmore, which means it will be a while until I have it again, because I have a significant backlog of whiskey before I'm buying another bottle. But it will be missed. And if you guys want a quick peek, that's a glimpse at just a small selection of the bottles finished since Maddox started suing Dick Masterson. So if I die from some sort of liver failure, I am directing my wife in the will to sue Maddox. You have no idea how much you've made me happy, because tomorrow I can go to my friends and tell them, in the case of rape, you can present your case in a rock opera. Yeah, definitely do that. Okay. All right, irresponsible drinking aside. Man, that is good. Guys, if you are a whiskey, or more particularly, if you are a scotch, and you have not had a 15-year Darkest Balmore, go buy one. My goodness, it's great. My goodness. And you are welcome, Samuel Oliverio. Sorry for my slurred diction. That's just how it's gonna be. Okay, so Gonzalez v. Reich, and I'm gonna bring it up, but I'm not gonna go through it, just to show you guys that I did some research, or at least pretended to. So this is Gonzalez v. Reich. It's 34 pages. I don't think you want me to read all of it. Let's do some background, though. Sorry for off topic, but when do we see sanctions in the lawsuit? May 16th is the scheduled hearing so far. And Poop Puppet says even the 12-year Balmore is good. And I have never had a 12-year Balmore, but I have a 12-year Balmore given to me by the same gentleman who provided me with the North Dakota Ultra Premium Whiskey, or the North Dakota Select Club. So, which is Brett Rinke, I think is his name. I hope I got that right, buddy. If I didn't, forgive me. I've been drinking your liquor. Yeah, so I will be delving into that 12 Balmore very soon. Speedy Gonzalez research. Gonzalez, man, if you did not catch whatever video I did that involved Castle Rock v. Gonzalez, I might have to do a whole video on Castle... Oh, no, I did a whole video on Castle Rock v. Gonzalez. It was one of the gun videos. Or I think it was about the federal government not having... Oh, it was about why the... Okay, the video is why the FBI won't take responsibility in the Parkland case. If you haven't watched that video, please go watch it. It didn't get a lot of play. YouTube demonetized it, so I don't have any interest in you watching it from a financial perspective, but go watch it. It's a completely different video than all of my others, and I just tell the story of Gonzalez v. Castle Rock, and it is one of the worst legal Supreme Court stories there is. One of the most tragic, very dark. So if you're into that sort of stuff, if you want to be depressed, go watch that. And we're going to get to depression later in this episode, so stay tuned when we talk about the impact of marijuana laws on real people. And I will give a nice anecdotal example, because that's all you can really give. But we have stats as well. 15-year-old Balmore, not Bowlesmore. It's just smoke. It's a little smoky and peaty, but it's sweet at the same time. Oh my gosh, it's good, guys. Okay, back to Gonzalez v. Reich. And I apologize for being off topic, but that's how the stream is going to go tonight. Users and growers of marijuana for medical purposes under the California Compassionate Use Act sought declaration that the Controlled Substances Act was unconstitutional as applied to them. The United States District Court for the Northern District of California, Martin J. Jenkins is the judge, denied plaintiff's motion for preliminary injunction. Plaintiffs appealed. United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit reversed and remanded, and cert was granted. Holding the Supreme Court, Justice Stevens, who I think is dead. Is he dead? I think he's dead. I hope he's dead. Well, that was rude. I think he's dead. Justice Stevens held that application of CSA, Controlled Substances Act, provisions criminalizing manufacture, distribution, or possession of marijuana to intrastate growers and users of marijuana for medical purposes did not violate the Commerce Clause. There we have it. There we have it. So what this says, their argument is that, listen, they're under California law, their actions are completely legal. They are growing for medical purposes and for medical distribution. Under federal law, their actions are illegal. And so they say, look, we're not selling to anyone outside of California. The the legislature regulates interstate commerce, not intrastate commerce. Since they regulate interstate commerce, this does not apply to us. To convict us for growing marijuana for the purposes of selling solely within California, where it is legal under state law, That is a violation of the Commerce Clause, and the Supreme Court says no. He's alive and pushing to repeal the Second Amendment. Wasn't that Breyer? No, was that Stevens? I thought that was Breyer. God, if it was, ugh, gross. I'll take your word for it because, you know, not in the best mental state, but, so yeah, long story short, these people grow marijuana for non-criminal purposes under state law. Feds come in and raid it. The state tries to say, no, you guys don't have authority here. The feds win because of the Supremacy Clause. Controlled Substances Act has supremacy over state law. And because Congress has the power to regulate interstate commerce. And because of, let's find it, because it ticks me off, Wickard. Here we go. Of particular relevance here is Wickard v. Filburn, where in rejecting the Applee farmers' contention that Congress's admitted power to regulate the production of wheat for commerce did not authorize federal regulation of wheat production intended wholly for the appellee's own consumption, the court established that Congress can regulate purely intrastate activity that is not itself commercial. Guys, realize what the court is saying here. That the words in the Constitution, Congress shall have the power to regulate interstate commerce, means that Congress shall have the power to regulate intrastate non-commerce. That's how screwed up these stupid idiots on the Supreme Court have been since 1933, I think, when it was decided. Do you think Congress should even have the power to regulate interstate commerce? Did the founders get that one wrong? No, I think they absolutely, like, what they meant. What color was the Supremacy Clause, by the way? I think it was black on parchment. No, I don't think they got that one wrong. The intention was to prevent a ridiculous tax. Like if, let's say you're bringing blue jeans that you're going to wear from Connecticut into the next state. I picked a stupid state, Minnesota into Iowa. So you're going from Minnesota into Iowa, and Iowa has a blue jeans importation tax because they want to. And they say you have to pay $50 per pair of blue jeans that you bring into the state, period. Even if you're just going to wear them for your own personal use, you're not going to sell them. They decide that they want to protect Iowa businesses and Iowa, weaving businesses. And they want to protect the textile production of blue jeans in Iowa. So if you're going to bring jeans into the state of Iowa from out of state, $50 fee per pair of jeans. That's wrong. That's stupid. It shouldn't happen. We're one country. We have one national currency. So no, I don't think they got it wrong in the intent that they were going for. I think the court interprets it in absolutely the most ludicrous way possible. And the reason the court does it is you'll find this from time to time. The court decides on an outcome that they want, and then they wrangle their way to it. This is what Roberts did in the Obamacare case. He weaseled his way into his decision. There's a treason case out there that says that, there's a constitutional provision that says no bill of attainder and no corruption of blood for treason, right? So you can't make something a treasonous act after the act has occurred and then apply that backwards to a previous act. And you can't attach treason by simple blood relations, okay? But there's a Supreme Court decision out there upholding treason for a guy basically accused because his son was a spy, and he let the son live in the house. And even though they couldn't prove that he knew the son was a spy, they just decided he was. Decided that he did. And so they convicted him of treason, even though they didn't have two witnesses, I don't believe, that could testify to the treason. And it was an attainder because the law that they actually convicted him of occurred after the acts of providing aid and comfort to his own child. So, they came to a conclusion. They wanted to convict a guy they wanted to convict a German origin man for treason during World War II. So they did. They just made it up. Ask my moderator about it. I have to double check whether Canada's Supreme Court cited Wickard as a basis for ignoring part of our Constitution. Unlike Scalia, we love international law. Why would anyone want to wrangle their way into anything? Oh, that's a Charlie Wrangle joke. Good job. Good job. So take that, Connecticut. You misspelled Connecticut. Connecticut. I don't think people who live in Connecticut can spell it. Okay, so let's get back to this decision. That is not itself commercial, i.e. not produced for sale. Uh-oh. Ubercube, drink/smoke legal herb from tobacco water pipe. There you go, buddy. Don't drink the water from a tobacco water pipe. Ugh, that seems like that would be gross. Ew. Okay. That is not commercial, not produced for sale. If it concludes that failure to regulate that class of activity would undercut the regulation of the interstate market in that commodity. Guys, let me translate that for you if you don't get it. I think you probably do, but I don't. Undercut the regulation of the interstate market in that commodity. Congress has the power to regulate the illegal market. It has the power to regulate the black market. And a little racist of us to call it the black market, I think. But Congress has the power to regulate the black market as well as the legal market. Because they have the power to regulate marijuana, and they say that you're growing it. This is the logic that they use. Your growing of the marijuana means you are not going to need to buy it from an illegal grower in a different state. Okay? So that's how it goes. I've assigned myself as a stand-in mod. I'll take my mute button now, please. Is Tess gone? I don't know that Tess is gone. Prove to me that she's absent. African American market, please. Guy, let the record show that Clay Early has called for an African American market. Clay, the 13th Amendment put a stop to that disgusting practice. You horrible, horrible human being. Good Lord, guys. Oh my gosh. Shame on Clay Early. Goodness gracious. In assessing the scope of Congress's Commerce Clause authority, the court need not determine whether respondents' activities taken in the aggregate substantially affect interstate commerce in fact, but only whether a rational basis exists for so concluding. Does Congress also have the power to regulate the space market because that makes about as much sense? Yes. Yes, they absolutely do. Don't joke about the black market being racist. There are some government individuals that specifically refuse to use the term because Canada. Canada. Yes, shame. Shame on Clay Early. Not necessarily for the comment, but just because Clay. People in the chat right now. Andrew Gluck, Clay Early, Hamilton Berger, Johnny Olson, Ket Goes, Kikrillis. Okay. Slavery is actually legal so long as it's done by the state for punishment. Yes. That is true. That is true, buddy. All right. So I think we're about done with this. But the point of Reich. I don't know how to pronounce any of these people's names. The point of this case is that federal government has supremacy through the Controlled Substances Act, which was passed through the Commerce Clause, and the Commerce Clause gives them the power to regulate things that are non-commercial, period. Ooh. All right. So, what happens next? Things go largely unchanged. Federal government has enforcement authority. Most states have marijuana as remaining illegal outside of medicinal purposes. Then in 2012, something interesting happens. Colorado and Washington State pass legalization of marijuana for recreational use. Legalization for recreational use. So then the Obama administration has a conundrum what do they do here? Do they continue federal enforcement, which they have the authority to do? And make no mistake, if the state says something is 100% legal and the feds say it is not, the federal government will win on the marijuana issue. That's what I really wanted to get across with Gonzalez versus Raich. Thank you, me, for reminding me of that. The federal government will win on this issue over the state every time. And when it's Commerce Clause and Supremacy Clause combined, feds win, and they shouldn't be. They shouldn't win. Colorado, I believe, did fully legalize marijuana, not just decriminalize it. And again, I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So the Obama Justice Department is faced with a conundrum. Do they take over all enforcement of marijuana in Colorado and Washington, or do they take this position? This is a position they chose. This is from the Office of the Deputy Attorney General, who is James M. Cole. And this is 4 pages. God, that sounds really boring. Let's go through some of it. In October 2009 and June 2011, the department issued guidance to federal prosecutors concerning marijuana enforcement under the Controlled Substance Act. This memorandum updates that guidance in light of state ballot initiatives that legalize under state law the possession of small amounts of marijuana and provide for the regulation of marijuana production, processing, and sale. So you still can't, I don't know the specific Colorado law, but I'm pretty sure you still can't have just a massive amount of it without some sort of licensure. I can't pronounce any of these names to someone who hasn't learned to type yours in months. The guidance set forth herein applies to all federal enforcement activity, including civil enforcement and criminal investigations and prosecutions concerning marijuana in all states. As the department noted in its previous guidance, Congress has determined that marijuana is a dangerous drug. It is dangerous. And that illegal distribution and sale of marijuana is a serious crime that provides a significant source of revenue to large-scale criminal enterprises, gangs, and cartels. Which it does, but so what? If cartels started selling bed sheets, would we illegalize bed sheets because cartels benefit from it? I don't think so. Note to cartels, any cartels who may be watching, the bed sheet market is ripe for you. Get that bootleg Egyptian cotton in there. The Department of Justice is committed to enforcement of the Controlled Substances Act consistent with those determinations. The department is also committed to using its limited investigative and prosecutorial resources to address the most significant threats in the most effective, consistent, and rational way in furtherance of those objectives. As several states enacted laws relating to the use of marijuana for medical purposes, the department in recent years has focused its efforts on certain enforcement priorities that are particularly important to the federal government. Is this of any legal effect? And as a defense lawyer, is such a memo any use in the criminal charge? No. This is no longer of legal effect because Jeff piece of trash Sessions, has actually revoked this memorandum. So, no, it is no longer of legal value. It would have been of legal value in a federal prosecution for marijuana in violation of the tenets listed herein. So, the department in recent years has focused its efforts on certain enforcement priorities that are particularly important to the federal government, including preventing the distribution of marijuana to minors. So you still cannot, the federal government can still step in Colorado if people are found to be distributing to minors. Preventing revenue from the sale of marijuana from going to criminal enterprises. So you still have to be a legal company to sell. Preventing the diversion of marijuana from states where it is legal under state law in some form to other states. That is actually interstate commerce, and Congress probably should be able to regulate that. And that makes sense, right? If something's legal in one state and illegal in the next state, we don't want someone to just grow right across the border of Colorado and then distribute to Nebraska. But there's no one right across the border of Nebraska, because if you've ever been to the Nebraska-Colorado border, there's nothing there. Nebraska is terrible. Preventing state-authorized marijuana activity from being used as a cover or pretext for the trafficking of other illegal drugs. So you can't sell heroin out of a marijuana dispensary. It's pronounced Beauregard. Preventing violence and the use of firearms in the cultivation and distribution of marijuana. So, guys, if you're trying to grow marijuana, don't fire your AK-47 at the ground. Don't do that. If you're cultivating marijuana, don't shoot the plants. What have minors ever done to deserve special dispensation? Dude, have you seen dwarves? Preventing drug driving and the exacerbation of other adverse public health consequences associated with marijuana use. And be sure, no matter what happens, if we do get legalization eventually, there will definitely be driving restrictions. Preventing the growing of marijuana on public lands and the attendant public safety and environmental dangers posed by marijuana production on public lands. So, Carolus brought up to me in a more private conversation the idea that national and state parks are being used for covert growing of marijuana, and that it makes these places exceedingly dangerous because people are maybe disappearing in those things. I am not familiar with this, but he has suggested that Joshua Tree is unsafe at certain parts. I retorted with Joshua Tree is a stupid name for a national park. So we're gonna keep that there. And preventing marijuana possession for use or use on federal property. So you cannot blaze up at the federal courthouse in Colorado. And the stream is dying. So I'm going to wait for a second. It's coming. It's going to come back. Okay. So it should be back now. Sorry about that. I was monitoring the bit rate and I noticed it dropped dramatically. So I have not said anything important in several seconds, which is really awkward. Actually, that's not awkward. I said hardly anything in several seconds, that's the awkward part. Saying something important is rare. Okay. These priorities will continue to guide the department. Okay, so basically, like, I'm not going to read all of this because this is really boring. Long story short, feds aren't going to enforce. If the states aren't going to enforce, the feds aren't going to enforce. Because it's expensive to take over the state's entire investigative branch for the sole purpose of enforcing on marijuana. So they stopped doing it. Joshua Tree sucks, which is why U2 named an album after it. Ooh. On a personal note, if U2 ever names an album after you, kill yourself. It's over. Your life sucks from that point on. So this was repealed recently by Jeff Sessions, and now federal prosecutors don't have specific guidance from justice on what to do with federal drug laws. The people who are in Colorado don't know the status of their operations, which are technically legal and have been since 2013, have not been enforced on by the federal government. But 5 years have gone by, and now, in theory, the federal government could come in and start enforcing. So who knows? I don't know. But ultimately, what does this matter, right? What does this matter? Who is drink master? You're confused. I am the drink master. So you just drink whenever you feel like it. All right, guys. Let's get a little personal. So what is all of this? What does this mean? What does this do? And this is going to be kind of the conclusion to my part of the stream. Hold on. I'm plugging in my phone, which is going to run out of batteries, and that is a fate worse than death. When I say conclusion to my part of the stream, once I'm done with this, I am out of material, and you guys are welcome to bombard me with whatever. We can talk about weed, we can talk about anything, but I'm going to tell you a story from my own practice. And it's a tough story for me to tell in some ways. It's not tough in other ways, but Some of you have heard this story. This is a client, and I'm not going to use any names, even though it's all public record, but just out of respect, I'm not going to use any names. So I had a client, and my client was charged with 5th degree, so the lowest degree felony possession of marijuana in the state of Minnesota. So grape drink is acceptable, buddy, always. And more than acceptable, it's actually preferable. So my client was charged with 5th degree felony possession in the state of Minnesota. Okay, let me tell you how this happened, because it's kind of a funny story. I don't know if you think of things in this way. So my client was, I refer to him as a kid. He's not really a kid. He's like 26, 27 years old. Good dude. I really, I got along very well with him. He's up one night, not late, it's about what time it would be right now, midnight, 1 a.m, something like that. And he gets hungry, so he microwaves himself a chimichanga, because who doesn't microwave themselves a chimichanga from time to time, right? He microwaves his chimichanga, and if you've ever microwaved anything that involves Mexican food, you know that it comes out soggy and disgusting, which is why I personally do not tend to partake in a microwave burrito or chimichanga or anything else like that. So, he microwaves this chimichanga, and he takes it out, and he doesn't like the way that they're typically soggy and nasty. Al-Qaeda doesn't. That's who. True. Al-Qaeda doesn't. So he doesn't like the way they're soggy and nasty. So he's got the deep fryer on as well. And he's ready to crisp that thing up. So it comes out of the microwave. He throws it in the deep fryer to kind of crisp up the outside just for a minute or two. And if you know anything about deep fryers and the introduction of water into a hot oil environment, it causes a bubbling action. And the oil bubbles up and spills over the edge of the deep fryer and ends up catching fire. Okay, so I'm a small town lawyer, right? And this guy is from a much smaller town than the one I practice in the next county over. And his town is tiny, and his house is like 120 years old. I don't know how much you guys know about old houses, or specifically old farmhouses, but what they use for insulation in these old houses is basically ground up newspaper that they soak in gasoline. Keck7 says, how do you reheat real Mexican food, Mr. Rackets? I do not have leftover Mexican food. It gets eaten. It gets eaten for sure. If I did, like if I'm reheating it for the kids, I do it in the oven, put it on a baking sheet, make sure it's crispy. Ovens remove moisture. Microwave ovens do not. So it takes a little longer, but it's worth it. Anything that takes, if you're going to do something, do it well. So we've got a 120-year-old house. And I joke about the gasoline, but they are basically insulated with ground up newspaper. Cellulose, they call it. They don't do this anymore because that stuff is highly, highly flammable. And as a house ages past a century, the timber that's used to hold it, the moisture is gone at that point, okay? So the house when we've got a fire on the whatchamacallit, on the fryer, you now have a house fire that is very serious very quickly. So the guy's got dogs, grabs his dogs, runs them outside. He goes into the house and grabs a couple things, namely his guns, grabs whatever ammunition he can grab, because you don't want ammunition cooking off in a house fire. Grabs the dogs, grabs the guns, grabs an Xbox, brings them all out to his truck, calls 911 and says, hey, I got a fire. So the fire department shows up. And yeah, what Johnny's saying, he says he's seen literal newspaper as insulation. Yes, I'm not joking. It is actual newspaper that's ground up into tiny pieces. Paper holds a lot of air, and and between like fibers and stuff like that. Paper is a pretty good insulator. And it was cheap and abundant back in the day. Specifically recycled newspaper. What do you do with it? Especially before we recycled things. But if you want to know why homeless people stuff newspaper in their clothes, it's because you can create large pockets of air, and when that air warms up next to your body, it keeps you warm. So he gets some stuff out of the property, calls 911, reports the fire. Fire department shows up. The house is fully engulfed. I have the pictures of this. It is comical how much fire has occurred. Within about 20 minutes of the fire starting, the whole house is lit up. It couldn't have gone better. I mean, for a burning of a house, it couldn't have gone better. But for this guy and his family, it couldn't have gone worse, right? So the house is lit up. The trees are on fire. The ground is on fire. And more importantly, about 20 to 30 yards away from the house, a small pile of garbage bags is also on fire. Hydrogen holds up a lot of blimps. Yeah. Yes, your mixtape levels of fire. Absolutely. So, more importantly, a small pile of plastic garbage bags is on fire. Now, in Minnesota, it is not technically legal to burn garbage, but people do it, especially out in the country. They burn garbage all the time. So this guy's got a pile of trash that's burning, and this is not uncommon. The police officers say to him, "Hey, what's up with this burning pile of trash?" And my client replies to the police officer, "Just let it go. It needs to go away anyway. It needs to burn up. I was meaning to get rid of it. It can just catch fire. I don't care about it." Police officer decides that is not acceptable, and he extinguishes the flames. He has a fire department guy extinguish the flames. And then he casually kicks a bag off of the pile. Now, why does he kick a bag off the pile? Because police officers don't want it to look like they're searching for things when they do search for things. Because a search would be a problem, right? If you conduct a search, then you got to have reasons for the search. If you just kick a bag randomly and it just happens to open up, then you haven't conducted a search. At least he thought. He's wrong. But long story short, kicks open the bag, bunch of marijuana spills out. Large amount. Well, I mean, I say large amount. I think the total was 102 grams of marijuana total. Or so plaintiff thought. 102 grams of marijuana is the total amount collected. This is green, bright green, leafy marijuana. Also includes stems and other things in that 102 grams, but it is unburned marijuana that is spread throughout this garbage. So the police decide that they should place my client under arrest for possession of marijuana. Now note the lunacy involved in this situation, okay? So my client is in the process of burning marijuana. I don't know that I don't think he intentionally burned the marijuana. The allegations, and I don't care about like digging into trying to find out if this is the truth or not. The allegation is that my client did not start that garbage fire. There's no evidence that he started the garbage fire. It likely started as a result of the house fire, okay? But the idea, my client has thrown away a quantity of marijuana. It is being burned. It is not being sold. It is not being distributed. And if you have any doubts about this, it is in amongst all sorts of regular garbage. Like the garbage bag is full of garbage, not full of marijuana. The marijuana is in there with everything else, okay? What even is the warrant clause? Yeah, we'll talk about the warrant in just a minute. I'm not sure if you've ever answered this. What do you think of the Digibro Lolicon debacle? Don't you dare, buddy. Don't you dare. We are not getting derailed into child porn on this stream. So he is whatever's going on, the marijuana is going away. It's not going to be used. It's not going to be sold. Nothing is going to happen with this. In fact, point of note, this marijuana had been used prior, not by my client, and I can attest to that. Not by my client, but used by another party who then gave the product to my client to dispose of. It was used by another party to create marijuana wax. So if you don't know how this process works, a wax or a resin is created by soaking marijuana in butane and doing some sort of controlled burn process that extracts the THC from the plant into the form of a waxy, honey-like resin. And then that waxy resin is a concentrated form of THC. It's very potent, and it can be used in certain types of e-cigs, I believe, something like that. It can be used in a discrete manner to provide a large amount of THC very quickly to someone. Okay? But the moral of this story is, the marijuana that was in those garbage bags is absolutely useless to anybody and is being disposed of. In my opinion, I don't see what the crime is there. I don't see what the crime is. I don't see how that's a possession charge. It's not like he's going to use it. It's not like it can be used at that point. It is merely an existent plant that is purposeless, smells like butane, should be burning like butane, but, alas, it was still green at the time. Now, important side note, the officer who testifies to our challenge of the lack of warrant in this situation testified that he, quote, smelled a large plume of marijuana smoke. This piece of trash lied under oath to get a 5th degree felony possession for someone who wasn't going to use or distribute this marijuana. Remember that. Remember that this cop, I have plenty of cops that I like, but this cop, this pile of human refuse, sat under oath and testified that a large plume of marijuana smoke erupted from a burning pile of plastic and aluminum, and all of the marijuana they recovered was green and soaked in butane. That lying coward can rot in hell for all I care. Okay? That guy is the antithesis of the good cop. Okay? I really do not like this particular officer, and I'm glad he's in a neighboring county and not mine, so I don't run into him very often. But this piece of garbage is the cause of this sad story, and it's a sad story, and I'll tell you why. We'll get to that. I know that possession, even if burning is possession, right? I get it. Like, I understand the legal aspect of it is technically in violation of the law. But the dumb thing is that in 20 minutes, he's no longer in possession of marijuana and no longer in violation of the statute. And that is the stupidest thing I can think of, with no monetary benefit to him, no violation of another statute to get there. In 20 minutes, by the course of natural physical processes, he is no longer in violation of the statute. I don't understand at all why that would be, why they bothered charging him and pursuing with the prosecution. This is one of those cases where, sure, you charge him, you bring him in, you look at it. They had some other questions. They actually thought he had committed arson. They thought he had burned down the house. They had no evidence of this. That's just what they thought. Don't talk to the police. Don't talk to the police. The police tried to get my client in to talk to them. They wanted to build an arson case against him, which is nonsense. This caused all sorts of problems for the family. Thankfully, I did not let him talk to the police. They talked to me first, and he did not get charged with the arson, even though that was the primary reason for all of their investigation, was a gut feeling that they thought arson was involved. But that's a different story for a different day. On this day, a piece of trash cop lied in front of the court and said he smelled marijuana smoke when it would be impossible to do so. I challenge you to burn a pile of garbage with marijuana soaked in butane that is still green when they recover it, which means it was not burning, and smell marijuana smoke. I challenge you to do so, remembering that the entire earth around them is recently on fire. So they would smell foliage burning. They would smell all of the chemicals of a 100-year-old house, like asbestos would be burning at this point. They'd smell all of this. And this guy says he distinctly smelled marijuana smoke. I don't buy it for a moment. And this guy will atone for that in whatever judgment God has in store for him. And again, why I feel strongly about this is coming. So we try to overturn the warrant. The judge comes up with the most ridiculous case law that I am 100% confident that had we appealed this case, we would have won. However, let's talk about the alternative. So my client could appeal this case and win. My client could spend thousands and thousands of dollars appealing this case. And I am 100% confident that we would have gotten the lack of warrant overturned, or the warrant requirement overturned. Okay. Or my client can pay, this is the plea agreement that we negotiated. My client can pay like $300 and do 1 weekend in jail. And then this conviction following that weekend in jail would be sealed forever. Zero conviction as far as anyone is concerned. So he would be convicted. He would serve 1 weekend in jail, the jail of his choice, anywhere in Minnesota. And then after that after that time was served, his conviction would be sealed, absent another possession charge in the future. That's the only reason this is a statutory, a statutory sentencing possibility for first-time offenders, is that the only way you could unseal it is if there was another specific possession charge in the future. The county attorney could unseal it to support the fact that he had a prior conviction. Other than that, no one on earth could find this document. No one could find out that he had been convicted of a possession crime. Would not affect his employment, would not affect his right to vote, would not affect his right to own guns. This is a sweet deal that we had negotiated. So the question is, do you spend thousands of dollars fighting this? Or you spend a couple $100 and 2 days in jail? Of course you take option B, right? Unless you're like a politician or something else, where it would be news or something. But so my client chooses option B. This is why I care. Okay. That was in January of last year. His sentencing was set for March of last year. And on Valentine's Day, he commits suicide. So from the time of conviction, the time of his guilty plea, and the plea agreement that we had negotiated, and the time of his sentencing, he decided that life was too hard to continue, and he killed himself. Killed himself on the eve of Valentine's. So Valentine's morning, I get a phone call from his mom, who tells me to call his dad. I don't know what's going on. I'm driving to work, and she says, "Hey, call up his dad. He has something to tell you." And so I call his dad, and his dad tells me that he's committed suicide, right? And I have a grown man on the phone crying. And that was the hardest day of work I've ever had by by a significant margin. And I don't know the reasons. Look, like, I'm not going to blame his suicide on the criminal conviction. Not at all. I'm not going to blame his suicide entirely on the police insistence that he burned down the house. And that insistence, by the way, made it very difficult for us to collect insurance money from the homeowner's insurance, because the police told the insurance company that my client committed arson when they had zero evidence of the arson. Okay, so the insurance company didn't want to pay out, and it took us probably 9 months to get that insurance payment from the time the house burned down, and several months from the time that my client commits suicide. So we did get all of it, and the insurance company, and I'm going to do this because I can, is Kirkhoven and Hayes. And Kirkhoven and Hayes, you can catch fire and burn to the ground for all I care. But they ended up paying out every dollar that they owed to this family. Thank goodness. But it took a significant amount of yelling. But I cannot get past the idea that my client would be alive today if it wasn't for the stress put on him by this criminal act, like this alleged criminal act. The misconduct of officers, the ridiculous miscarriage of justice by this judge, who should have vindicated my client as not guilty of anything because they did not have a warrant to conduct a search of the trash pile. And they used the unlawful search of the trash to justify the warrant for the search of the rest of the property, which, by the way, they found nothing. Nothing actionable on the rest of the property. But I cannot help but think that the actions of the cop, the judge, and our stupid criminal justice system for criminalizing the possession of marijuana that is being destroyed, not distributed, not consumed, led to the death of my client. Okay? Like, I can't get past it. I talked to him on several occasions. I, of course, can't disclose the specifics of those conversations with you guys, but I can tell you very much that this conviction and the accusations of arson and the entire criminal system put enough stress on this kid that I think that it factored heavily in his suicide. And, yeah. So, marijuana laws can eat a bullet for all I care. I'm done with them. You know, I would maybe defend not necessarily them intrinsically, but the right of the government to criminalize marijuana in the past. I'm far beyond that. It is ridiculous. This chemical is far more harmful to people. I'll say, and I make no mistake, guys, I have seen lives ruined by marijuana use. Okay. I grew up the same as all of you. We all know that guy. We all know that guy who threw his life away because he was on pot. I think, Offspring has a song all about it. The kids aren't all right. We know that guy. My red pill grew a third eye tonight. Wow. We all know the guy that marijuana has ruined their life, right? It doesn't matter because Pringles have ruined Amy Schumer's life. That hoe is fat. Make no mistake, because she can't stop eating. And obesity is far worse for you than marijuana use. So it's time. It's time to legalize, not decriminalize marijuana. Oh, I never got to the difference between decriminalization and legalization. All right. Thanks, Zeph. I really appreciate that. So decriminalization is this thing where they go from a felony or misdemeanor enforcement of marijuana to a petty misdemeanor or something less, or even a civil enforcement of marijuana laws, where basically if you get caught with weed under a certain amount, this is decriminalization. This is what it looks like. You get caught with, say, 1 joint. A police officer doesn't charge you with a crime, but they issue you a civil citation, similar to running a red light camera light, okay? In a major metropolitan area, you run a light that's got a red camera thing on it. It takes your license plate, and they can't rise to the level of a criminal conviction because they don't know if you're driving, they don't know all sorts of stuff necessarily. So they charge you with just a fine, 25, $30. You run through the civil process and take care of it. You typically have a court fee, so $25 becomes $100. This is what decriminalization of marijuana looks like. However, you can read articles and you can do it on your own. You can do it on your own. I'm not going to bring up the articles here, but you can read articles about this from all sorts of super liberal publications, which are annoying to read, I know, but the struggle is real, okay? Where even in places where they have decriminalized marijuana, if a cop sees someone smoking a joint, that joint is decriminalized, but they don't know, okay, if someone's got a kilo of cocaine in the back because they're smoking a joint, which is not illegal necessarily because it's not criminalized, but it is illegal in the sense that it is finable. So what it does is it gives the police officers permission to approach. Now, if you don't know, when a police officer has permission to approach someone, any enforcement of any law ends at the barrel of a gun, no matter what the law is. If it's enforcement of a civil fine for a non-criminal amount of marijuana, it ends at the barrel of a gun more often than it should, which is it should never end at the barrel of a gun. Someone smoking a joint should never result in a police officer shooting them. But you can find all sorts of examples of people who are unarmed, who have marijuana, and who are shot by police due to circumstances involving the marijuana, and the amount of marijuana they have is non-criminal in the state that they're in because it's decriminalized. It's not legal. It's just decriminalized. Minnesota has decriminalized marijuana, okay? If you have less than 42 grams of marijuana, I think is the limit, 42 and a half grams of marijuana in Minnesota, it's not a criminal amount. You will not be arrested. You will not be charged with a misdemeanor or a felony. You will be charged with a civil charge of marijuana possession. They will likely confiscate the marijuana from you. It's a small amount of money that you have to pay. I think it comes out to about $100 after court fees. I didn't say you would competently read them. They're armed with a joint. Yes, absolutely. I got arrested for walking to middle school like 4 years ago because someone stole from a Home Depot 4 miles away, and I matched the description vaguely, really vaguely. You were in middle school 4 years ago? God, I'm old. All authority starts at the barrel of a gun. The threat of violence is the only thing that gives rules and laws any power. Absolutely, and that's my point in all this. Decriminalization, but still maintaining civil liability or still maintaining a petty misdemeanor status for marijuana. Like in Minnesota, if you have 15 grams of marijuana on you, that's decriminalized. You can get a petty misdemeanor. It will, you'll pay a fine. It'll go off your it won't go on your record or anything like that. It'll go away, and then you're done. You won't get arrested for it. They'll just confiscate it and then issue you a citation, just like a speeding ticket. Okay. That's decriminalization, but it still provides the basis for an interaction with the police. And these days, an interaction with the police is a roll of the dice on if you live or die. It really is. It really is. Now, I know it's a far remote possibility. The overwhelming amount of interactions with police end up with everybody alive and everybody okay. I'm not trying to disparage police, but I don't want a police officer to misunderstand me scratching my side as me reaching for a gun, or me scratching my back as me reaching for a gun and me dying from it, okay? And I don't think you do either if we really get into it. When are we going to legalize crosswords, Rekieta Law? I'm close to the point where that should happen too. But let's start with weed. All right, guys. 6 to 7 years ago. I keep forgetting I'm 20. Well, enjoy being 20, buddy. Enjoy your 20s. Live it up. Have a good time. I am 36, so I'm long past that 20-year-old stage. Might have missed it, but Tanu Bojangles also gave Super Chat. Also, are you running for elected office? Let's talk about that. I did talk. I didn't specifically mention Tanu Bojangles. I did read the Super Chat. I apologize. Tanu Bojangles says, my red pill grew a third eye tonight. Wow, 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 wow. So thank you very much for that, of course. And I'm happy to grow eyes and red pills all over the place. But and I apologize for not reading your name earlier. Also, are you running for elected office? Well, there's a compromising picture of me out on the internet that I'm sure you guys are familiar with, that I'm guessing, despite the actual context of the event, would prevent me from ever being elected to public office. So I probably won't. I will just attempt to influence Congress from the sidelines. And hopefully, as this YouTube channel grows, as you guys help me grow this channel just by watching and participating, you know, we'll get a legal voice out there that, and no slight to the other internet YouTube lawyers out there. Love those guys. They're great. But we'll get a legal voice out there who can do some advocacy. And I am happy to advocate for various things and things that I think should be done. And that'll come with growing subscribers. So we'll see how it goes. If this project continues and grows in the way it has grown, I see good things in the future. And starting with the Minnesota level, and we'll move up to the national level as we get more and more people on board. Absolutely. But I think oftentimes, people that have more power outside of elected office. Doe TV says, sorry for calling you fat. You're skinny. Thanks, buddy. It is the first time I've been called fat online. I'll take it. Do you still hope I choke on this swill? Cause that's okay. Like I'm fine with disagreement. The unarmed thing is difficult. I remember reading a stats that most officers that are shot with their own firearm. And absolutely. Mike Brown and Darren Wilson, right? Mike Brown was unarmed. And just because he was unarmed does not mean he was not dangerous. He was clearly dangerous. And I fully support the grand jury's finding was that Darren Wilson was in danger, right? And it's hard to argue that Darren Wilson was in danger. He had physical injuries. The testimony that Mike Brown was hands up, don't shoot, all that stuff ended up falling apart in grand jury testimony. I read all of it, guys. It is pages and pages and pages of transcripts. It's all out there. I strongly suggest to read. Maybe I'll do a video on it at some point. But all of the initial reports that Darren Wilson was like aggressive, that Mike Brown had his hands up and was submissive, all of that fell apart immediately upon grand jury questioning of the witnesses, and just simple forensics, right? The forensics were they found blood splashes 20 yards away from where Mike Brown ended up, which means that Mike Brown moved towards Darren Wilson while being shot and died after moving. Darren Wilson, I think, was one of the police shootings that was probably justified. I mean, I hope no shooting ends or no interaction with cops ends in a shooting. I really do. I don't want anyone to be shot by police. I don't want a police officer to have to pull a trigger. I want everybody to go home at the end of the day. All right. But if there's a justified shooting, I think Darren Wilson's a pretty good one. And yes, there's evidence that Brown was reaching for Darren's firearm. There were powder burns, I think, on his hand. The indication was that he was reaching for Darren Wilson's firearm when he was shot in the car. Oliverio says, it depends a lot on where you are in Ohio. Strongsville and North Olmsted, they're effing insane. In Berea, where I live, they're reasonable. Don't care what you do. Absolutely. It sounds like something a Russian internet troll would say. Get ready to be served by the DNC. Oh, man, it would be great if the DNC would sue me. Thoughts on the DNC lawsuit against Trump campaigns, Russia, WikiLeaks? Plan on making a video about it? Yes, I mentioned at the beginning of this video. I'm guessing you weren't here yet, and that's fine. I will be covering the DNC lawsuit very soon. Can I fix Canada as well? I would love to, but I don't think anything can fix Canada. I don't know if it's fixable. Just carve out Banff for me when the rest of Canada burns, because it's really beautiful. While slurring speech, we will get sound legal advice out there. Absolutely. No, it's okay. Don't choke. I was just sad Mars has a weak case. You know, Mars has a weak case now. Mars Argo. This is on the Poppy lawsuit. I don't know if Mars hasn't, will end up having a weak case. I'm a little disappointed in what they put forward in their complaint. I absolutely am. That doesn't mean that they won't get more evidence and amend the complaint. Sometimes in these big cases like this, especially with large fan bases, a complaint is an invitation. Someone mentioned to me that there was evidence of, what's his face? Titanic Sinclair punching Argo in the face. Okay. And they say that basically someone hacked Titanic Sinclair's computer at some point and found documentation of him punching her, like some Reddit posts or something like that about it. If they have that information, they should provide that. They should get that to Mars Argo's attorney. Absolutely. Because, the attorneys, if the attorneys aren't hacking the thing, they can still acquire the information legally and they can present that information to the court. And then it would be Sinclair's attorney's job to cast doubt on on the evidence provided. That's a back and forth. But sometimes these invitations, and I think we'll see this in the Damore lawsuit, these complaints are an invitation for the public to provide some extra evidence that maybe the parties don't have access to. In the Damore lawsuit, they filed an amended complaint, and it looks like there's more evidence of Google's abuses based on conservative values. Okay. So that they've been provided by some third party. If there are people who have information that can help Argo, they should contact Argo's legal team. The TMZ did not do a good job of obscuring their name. You can find out who the legal team is very easily. They should provide that. And because ultimately, the best result is the correct result. So if there's information that Sinclair battered Argo sometime within the past 3 years, they should absolutely provide that, and that will help the court make that decision. So I don't know if it'll end up that way. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. As far as Poppy, Sinclair, and Argo, I have no dog in that hunt. I've done marginal research on it. Like I said, just watching a couple of their videos to kind of get a feel for their art and a feel for the production. And one of the Argo songs is pretty catchy. I don't know. Anyway, but I think that let's let the court get all the information they can and just determine if people are infringing, if people are abusive. If Sinclair's the abusive animal that he's described as being, man, then he sounds kind of terrible. And I don't have any reason to believe or doubt the evidence. So no dog in that hunt. So anyway, I'll try not to choke on the liquor, but seriously, thank you for watching, and thanks for your comment. On a lighter note, how about all that propensity evidence in the Cosby trial? I haven't been following it. I need to follow the Cosby trial, but I'm not going to comment on it because I cannot give an educated perspective on it at all. Mars Argo's punch out. So is this what the lawsuit was? Maddox putting out an invitation for more evidence? In some cases, in some ways, I think so, right? The only problem is they never amended their complaint and they never asked to. Probably because there wasn't more evidence. No more snow. I stay active politically no matter what your background, I'd stay active politically no matter what your background is. Everyone deserves a second chance. My background is absolutely pristine in the terms of actual damage done to other people. Okay. So there are people trying to miscast an old photo of me, and that's fine. Whatever. They'll do that, right? And if anyone ever has any questions about that, you can just ask me personally, and I'd be happy to talk to you about the situation. What will cause the apocalypse? Governments. That's the ultimate answer. Government will cause the apocalypse. They ruin everything. Oh, some fun things that I brought up. Okay, so if you go out to the ACLU, you'll get one perspective on, I'm not going to show the old photo. The old photo is now private. It was always supposed to be private. There's a weird thing that happened that made it public, and people found it. So I didn't even know it was out there. But anyway, so no, I'm not going to do it in this stream, maybe in another stream in the future. Yes, that's right. I'm getting the feeling that you own at least one assault rifle. All of my guns have been disposed of or have been stolen. I do not own any firearms as far as any government is concerned. They're all gone. I don't know what happened to them. More importantly, I don't want to know. So let's talk statistics. If you guys go out there and you read statistics from the ACLU, they will suggest that over 50% of drug arrests are related to marijuana, simple possession of marijuana, and that a large percentage of people in jail are there because of marijuana, which is absolutely true. Why you got to take my Drink Master title away? Do you just start your day hoping to wreck mine? Clay, you'll always be the actual Drink Master. Don't think I have any power over you. What are you talking about? What about the charging and subsequent acquittal of the wife of the Orlando nightclub shooter? From what I've read about that was a witch hunt gone bad. And so, I mean, if, it looks like, I don't know. I have to review kind of the case against the wife, but from what it looks like, they were trying to take the bad acts of one person and put them on another because the one person was dead. So, there's a lot about that nightclub shooting that was agendized, and I don't like things that are agendized. I don't know if agendized is the word anymore. I don't care. But there's a lot about it that bothers me. Like, not that the guy didn't shoot 49 people or whatever. Terrible human being, right? Terrible decisions. Don't shoot people ever. That's unless in self-defense. But if you don't have to, don't shoot him then. Better for you if you don't shoot him then. If you don't have to. If you have to, do what you got to do. But shooting 49 people in a nightclub's a bad move. But the narrative we were fed was that it was motivated by their sexual orientation, stuff like that. And a lot of evidence has come out as a result of that attempted prosecution of his wife that suggests strongly otherwise. But it goes to what I was talking about earlier, where people come up with a narrative and then try and mold the law to that narrative. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. GD boat accidents. Yeah. They all fell to the bottom of some lake. I don't even remember what lake I was on because I was drinking, but I was not driving the boat. And I was able to swim to shore. Okay, so kind of getting back to where I was going. If you go read the ACLU talk about marijuana, they'll have a particular set of facts pointing to decriminalization. And they do it from a social justice issue, which I try and stay out of social justice issues, okay? Because my ultimate perspective is I don't care if you're racist or not. Like, I don't care. I think that we should all have the freedom to be racist or not racist, whatever we want to do, and then we should bear the consequences of our actions, whatever they may be. Legally, I don't think the government should care if you're racist or not. Like, if you're a racist citizen, are you entitled to less privileges and rights than others under the state? No, I don't think so. So, like, for example, I did a video on the Starbucks thing, and I stuck heavily to the legal issues of the Starbucks incident. My personal opinion, I think you should be able to refuse service to whoever you want and exclude whoever you want from your property, no matter what. Like, I don't care if you just don't like the way they look, if you don't like the way they talk, if you don't like the language they're speaking, if you don't like the color of their skin. I don't care. It's your business. I would hope to have the same freedom in my business, to say no to whoever I wanted for whatever reason. If it's because I want to take a nap instead of talking to you, it's because I want to take a nap instead of talking to you. Go away. Get out of my office. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, that's not how the law works. I think we're getting to a time in our social interactions where that's how the law can be. And I understand why the law doesn't work that way, right? In the 1960s, we had whole industries excluding people based on their skin color. That's a bad thing. It's bad for business, if nothing else, from a purely economical perspective, it's bad for business to exclude specific demographics of the population. And I can see why in the 1950s and 1960s we moved away from that and we tried to criminalize that and give people civil, or not criminalize it. We tried to make it illegal and give people civil remedies for when they're the products of discrimination, because we had rampant discrimination. These days, I think we're getting to a time when we can move away from that and allow people, because of social media predominantly, because when a certain race is kicked out of a Starbucks, the social media response is enough immediately to make Starbucks close 8,000 stores for a whole day. Like, that is a phenomenal amount of lost money for the company. Phenomenal. And they're going to spend a ton of money on hiring some idiots to come in and talk to everybody. Okay. So the social network response to Starbucks, the market reaction to their actions, should tell us that the market is capable of handling these things in 2018, and we don't need the government to do it anymore. But until then, in the Starbucks case, I focused highly on the legality. My personal opinion on all this stuff: you should be able to exclude whoever you want or include whoever you want. I don't care if you only want to serve 30-year-old Mexican men, period. And that's your whole demographic and that's what you got. Serve them. I don't care. If I can't do it, I'll go somewhere else to get whatever I'm after. And if I can't buy it from you, then I can't buy it from you, period. I don't care. If you want to exclude all white people, go ahead. Go ahead. If you want to exclude white Christian men, fathers of five, go ahead. I don't ultimately care. And I think our market is big enough now to take care of that. But anyway, so that was a big tangent. The alcohol is getting to me. The ACLU is attacking the marijuana issue from the social justice aspect. I don't know if it's because they're all a bunch of SJWs. I don't care if that's why. I'm happy that they're tackling the issue and they're doing so in a way to bring people in. Fine. I'm fine with it. They're an ally. Let's get people involved in this. But if you read them, they'll talk all about how horrible marijuana is. And I want to provide the counter to that. And this is the government talking. Okay. So do I hate racism personally? Absolutely. Let me be clear, guys. This is DOTV. DOTV asked, do I hate racism personally? Absolutely. I grew up, the first part of my life was spent in Houston, Texas. Okay. I'm going to dox myself a little bit. I was born in Houston, Texas, and I grew up in a place called Inwood Forest Village, which is right next to Acres Homes. Okay. And I grew up there. I lived there from 1982 or 83 until 1991. And Acres Homes at that time was a top 5 crime community in the United States. It was the next neighborhood over from mine. It has since cleaned up quite a bit through neighborhood watches and collaborative efforts between the community and police. And it's actually safe to drive through now. Even though it doesn't look safe to drive through, all the houses are up on blocks with very nice Cadillacs in the driveways, even though the houses are as big as the room I'm in right now. Okay. I grew up as a minority. All right. I went to Inwood Elementary School, followed by Stovall Elementary School, which was constructed when I was entering 3rd grade. I went to Stovall Elementary School in 3rd grade. If this leads you to dox me in some way, that's interesting. I hope you can find more information than I've ever been able to find out about any of this stuff. So I went to Stovall Elementary School in 3rd grade and 4th grade before moving to Minnesota. And in Texas, at Inwood Forest and Stovall, I was a minority population. I get it. Okay. I was terrified. I did not fit in with the people around me, with my peer groups. I was not specifically mistreated by being white. Don't misunderstand. But the people in my class, the majority of people in my class were not white at all. And it was, in some ways, it was a little scary. To put it in perspective, when I was a 1st grader riding the bus to school, my bus was pulled over by the police because kids were fighting on that bus. And I won't get into their races because we had black kids, we had Mexican kids, we had Indian kids, We had Asian kids. I guess Indians are Asians as well. And when I say Indian, I mean from India, not Native American. I don't think we had any Native American kids in our class. And we had a couple white kids. Again, I was very much the minority in that class. That part of Houston was predominantly black, followed by Mexican, followed by, or I guess Hispanic. I don't know, but primarily Mexican, followed by white. All right. And then, so I get it. I get it. I grew up in a poor part of Houston that was, or for my early years before moving to Minnesota, poor part of Houston that was, predominantly, low economic status African-American was the predominant demographic. Okay. And I, even as like a 8-year-old, experienced various aspects of racism and racial discrimination. All right. I hate it. All of my friends, throughout my entire life have been various races, black, Mexican, Asian, doesn't matter. I don't care. I've never cared about it. And if you think that, a person is somehow deficient based on their skin color, I don't understand that. I never will. So personally, yeah, I hate racism in the sense that I don't understand the purpose of it. I don't care though. If you're a racist, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to determine what your experiences have led you to. Okay. Like I'm not going to say something is valid or invalid when I'm not in that life experience. I would hope that you wouldn't dislike people based on their skin color, but whatever. We can talk about it at some point in time. This is a long tangent about this. Where did I get that? There's a bar in Chicago that won't allow in anyone under the age of 23. Not sure that's legal, but it definitely should be. Of course, they are SJWs. That's why they're selling the First Amendment and Second Amendments down the river while acting like the Constitution is a buffet instead of a suicide pact. Yes, and that is the problem with the ACLU right now is they've lost their vision. Like, let's make this 2 seconds. What do you think of Ron Paul? I don't know. Ron Paul seems like that. Ron Paul, okay. Ron Paul is like that crazy uncle who has all the right ideas, but the wrong timeline. Okay. Ron Paul wants to like go full libertarian tomorrow. And I don't think that that's where we go. I think it takes time to get there. And this is my summary of the libertarian movement. It's a great ideal for the future. Let's work towards it. And let's perpetually be working towards libertarianism, whatever that means, and start adding freedoms back to the American people. I'm all for it. Whether we get there or not, I don't care. Do you think the courts will ever catch up to the internet, modern technology, social media, or will things keep developing at a rate where the courts will always be out of date? In my recent homeschool class, I suggested that that they appoint a second Supreme Court of 30 to 35-year-old judges. That's what needs to happen for the court to catch up to technology, and they will handle all technology issues. Then the 72-year-old average age Supreme Court can catch fire for all I care. Did you at least get a cool nickname for being a white dude in a black school? No. My nickname was, I'm going to stay quiet and be good at math. You up in 5th Ward? I don't know if I was up in 5th Ward. Let's see. Where Inwood Forest Village is on the northeast side of town, over by Inwood Forest. I was at the intersection of Little York and West Gulf Bank, if that helps you find it. If you're familiar with Houston, the close malls were the close mall was what was it? Oh gosh, I went there all the time. Went to Northwest Mall and not Greenspoint. Greenspoint was its own special kind of dangerous. The other that's pretty close. Okay, you know where I was. What group, if any, has pissed you off more than any other? What group? What do you mean, what group? I don't know what that means. And then Dick 2020. But, okay. That was a huge tangent off the ACLU thing. Okay, so the ACLU will tell you statistics. I have done my due diligence, and I have provided reliable government non-propaganda statistics. Look at this non-propaganda. Marijuana and who's in prison. And more importantly, I didn't even use that one. Where are we? Did I not load it up yet? Just a second. Okay. Marijuana and who's in prison. Here we go. You know this. Thanks for sharing. I just like him because he seemed to stand his ground and likes that humidifier. Who's really in prison for marijuana? And this is a government document, guys, so you know this is reliable. Group or type of thought. Okay, SJWs, 100%. SJWs can catch fire. Like, the idea that we have to have organized campaigns to punish anybody, go away. Like, just let people live. Like, that's the goal of everything, is just leave me alone. You leave me alone and I'll leave you alone. Getting involved in people's personal lives for whatever personal cause that you have, you need to eat a cinder block. Okay. So here's the government thing. Who's really in prison? Drug legalizers want you to believe a lie that our prisons are filled with marijuana smokers. In fact, the vast majority of drug prisoners are violent criminals, repeat offenders, traffickers, or all of the above. And I'll note that this little thing, it can't actually substantiate these claims because BJS, the Bureau of Justice Statistics, doesn't actually track them in that way. So good job. Jason Benayem, what's your opinion on dog bite statistics? Oh, man. I think pit bulls are a maligned group of dogs. I'm a pro pit bull warrior, and if you mess with pit bulls, real talk, guys. I hate taking care of animals, so I don't like any of them. That's the real talk. There it is. Banned from Twitter now, I'm sure. It's only a matter of time, buddy. I'm going to finish that in a second, and it's going to be glorious. So I wanted to include this because, wow, that's big. If you've never seen propaganda from the government, this is what it looks like. This is from the Office of National Drug Control Policy. But they talk about statistics. Let's look at this, because I was reading this, and this is just great. Untangling the statistics, guys. Why are you done? Marcella T. What? I'm done? What do you mean? What are you done? Are you done because I'm not a big fan of feeding animals or like taking care of them? Like, okay, let me give you some personal background. I'm a father of 5 children and I have a wife. What happens when animals are introduced to our home is it goes this way. It goes this way. Oh, yeah, Dad, we'll all take care of the animals. You don't have to do anything. Because it's like, can we get whatever animal? Dog, cat, doesn't matter. Can we get this dog or cat? No. Well, we'll take care of it. You don't have to do anything. Really? Oh, yeah, we'll feed it, we'll clean it, we'll keep it, we'll pet it. Everything's fine. Change the litter box if it's a cat, right? What always happens, it takes like 2 hours of having the animal. And suddenly Dad is the only person ever taking care of the animal. So that's the reason. I don't mind other people having the animals at all. You can have all the animals you want. You can take care of them. I will love your animals all day. I don't want to take care of animals in my house because I'm the guy who ends up doing it all the time. And I just don't want to deal with that anymore. I had the same problem recently. My buddy's girlfriend gave me a dog and I have a soft spot for dogs. Now I'm stuck with 3 effing dogs and my sister who adores them refuses to help. Isn't that amazing? People who love these animals never want to take care of them, right? Not all of you. There's some people who take very good care of their animals, and props to you for doing it. And I'm glad that you do. Animals need love and can be great companions. I just don't want to do it anymore. I'm tired of it. It's been a long time. Is Tevi from Fiddler on the Roof a traditional papa guy over a court case? Wait, traditional papa blessed with 5 kids? Yes, I am Tevier. Some people do say I'm Jewish, but I'm not. So I'm Polish. What's the closest you've come to punching or fighting a guy over a court case? Whew. I'm not going to answer that question. No, I will answer that question. I had an eviction case not too long ago. An old high school classmate of mine called me up. They were having trouble with their landlord. And I called the landlord in like the friendliest manner possible to just try and resolve this thing out of court, because this is a landlord-tenant issue. And it seemed kind of funky. So I just called him up. I'm like, hey, I'm a lawyer. And this person immediately accused me of lying about being a lawyer and representing someone without a license, even though I offered to provide my attorney's license to them. And then they attacked my credibility and my ethical behavior. And then they threatened to, quote, haul me to jail as like a random scrub idiot. And I was, had I not been separated by distance, and we were talking over the phone by that person, there very well could have come to blows very quickly. We won dramatically. So there's that. Okay, so let's get back to this government document, and I'm not going to go through much of this at all. This is just funny as I was going through research. Numbers don't lie, but they can deceive. Because remember, folks, the government will tell you how to understand the numbers that are right in front of you. A little knowledge, it's often said, is a dangerous thing. Coming from your government, y'all. You watch these idiots question Zuckerberg on at Congress, right? Like, a little knowledge is certainly a dangerous thing in the hands of 80-year-old morons. Who said that? Who said what? Oh, the landlord. The landlord said he would haul me to jail. This guy was semi-delusional and thought that he was a law enforcement officer because he knew people who were related to law enforcement officers. The feds have a stats for you. And that is precisely the problem in the marijuana sentencing debate. The danger, of course, is that arguments built on shaky ground can still be quite persuasive, especially if they tug at the heartstrings and stir outrage over an apparent injustice. Guys, this is a government document telling you what to think right here. Those pushing to relax marijuana laws rely on authentic sounding numbers and percentages to make their points. Numbers that you can verify in all sorts of ways. To make their point about peace-loving pot smokers languishing in prison. And yet statistics can mask as much as they reveal. Drug advocates often select only those portions of the available data that support their position, ignoring facts and context that would point to a very different conclusion. Because just so you know, everyone in prison was factually convicted on a set of facts. No one in prison lied to get a more favorable plea agreement, or lied to plea guilty because they couldn't afford an attorney, or was convicted because they attempted to represent themselves and incompetently due to the fact that they didn't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on an 8-year education, improperly filed documentation, or improperly presented evidence, or weren't able to competently cross-examine witnesses. That's not the reason they're in prison. It's solely because of the facts. The facts. F you, government. Catch fire. I don't care if you guys all die. Congress can eat garbage until they die of E. coli. I don't care anymore. Go away. That I can't even. If I read more of that document, I will punch holes through walls. So anyway, friends, I think it's time to bring this stream to a close. So if you have any last minute questions or comments, please send them my way and I would be happy to address them. otherwise, if they don't come up in the next couple seconds, when the stream catches up, because I understand there's a time delay, and I will allow for that time delay. Once the stream catches up, I am going to blank it out, and we'll close out the stream. But this has been wonderful, ranting with you guys, and I always appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. Enjoy your 420, and we'll be covering. Like I said, we'll be covering the Trump DNC stuff. We'll be covering the Taylor Swift cases, if there is one. We'll be covering the Damore amended complaint very soon. If you have other content, please check me out on, patreon.com/lawsplaining. Patrons' suggestions for content get extra notice. If you hit $5 level Patreon, you get access to the Lawsplaining Discord, where we have great conversations and we have live chats basically every Wednesday. If I'm not able to make a Wednesday, we make it up, and we have all sorts of other stuff. Okay, taking some questions. So Zephael says, the sheriff keeps calling me because my dog is outside in the cold, but they don't complain about cows. Do you handle cases like this? I would, absolutely, if you want me to. There was a case where a person was convicted recently of having a husky out. This was not in Minnesota. I don't know what case this was or what state this was. They had a husky out in 20-degree Fahrenheit weather, y'all. It's a husky. They're going to die immediately. Dog cases are the dumbest things, like dog being outside cases. Like, how is a dog going to live outside in 90 degrees? Well, I don't know. How did they live before we started bringing them inside? Oh my God, they're stupid. I hate animal control and everything involved in it. Thanks for the awesome stream. Glad I finally caught one live. Thanks, buddy, for coming. Always appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. What do you think is the most likely way that marijuana will be legalized? I think marijuana will only be legalized by an act of Congress. I think it will start at the states. We need more states to legalize marijuana, and then we need the federal government to be pressured into doing it. Thanks for the show, Nick. It was a good one. Thank you, buddy. I heard Rekieta Law waifu had to learn how to do drywall because of his wall punching. No lie. I'd never lie. I probably don't lie. I do all my own drywalling from the holes, buddy. Rekieta Law, will the prophesized ganja gladiator emerge next 420? Yes. Yes, hopefully it will be next 420. As your self-proclaimed newest mod, I'm going to need that Discord slick. We'll talk about it, Clay. Private message me and make your case. How likely the random drug test will drop tomorrow? Man, I'm guessing for a lot of people it's going to drop tomorrow. You can drop random drug tests on me all day. I'm clean. Gluck and Kimball can eat my... The Rafter's in here. Guys, the Rafter, he loves Wickard v. Filburn. So make sure anytime you're talking to the Rafter, you praise him in his support of the worst decision in history. He thinks it was great. He cites it all the time. It's his favorite lawsuit of all time. This was awesome. Glad I could participate. Have a good night. You too, buddy. I'll see you around. Thanks for joining. Point of order. I believe I am your lawyer. Clay, buddy, I'm not going to contact myself. Point of order. I believe Kimball is releasing an interview video of me with me today. Kimball, the Silver Hammer. If you have not, I think he's released it. If he hasn't released it, watch for it. If he has released it, go watch it. Should be a fun time. I had tons of fun filming it with him. Kimball's a great dude. Really funny. Like, far more talented than anyone has given him credit for so far. So check out the video. We had a blast. At least I did. So do it. And you get to see a glimpse at the inside of my office. Are you hyped for the new Battletech game coming out on the 24th? I wish I could be hyped, but I'm running out of time for all the games I had. Oh, that reminds me. I have a Twitch channel. If you guys are watching this, come on twitch.tv/lawsplaining. I think it is. It's in the description. Let me take a look. Twitch TV /Rekieta Law, not Lawsplaining. Twitch.tv /Rekieta Law. Check out my Twitch channel. I play video games most nights starting around midnight to 12:30. And my goal is to be live streaming those all the time. I just got Dragon Ball Fighter Z and did a test stream the other day and got just royally dominated online. So check those out. Various other games will be played, including with Patreons. Playing Warhammer 40K or Warhammer Total War Warhammer 2, as well as Vermintide 2. I would love to play the BattleTech game. Absolutely, but I don't know if I'll have time to do it. We'll see. But yes, please subscribe to my Twitch channel. It's free to subscribe. If you get me to 50 subscribers, I think I'm at like 23 now. I just started it. If we get to 50 subscribers, I can become a partner, I think. And then I can get like the Amazon subscription. So it would really help out if you do that. It will have all sorts of different, like any content that I would produce that will not be here will be on Twitch. This channel will be reserved primarily for the, Lawsplaining topics, specifically going through lawsuits and legal issues. But other fun stuff I will try and keep on the Twitch channel because I want to make the products distinct. And if I, of course, hope there's audience overlap. But if there are people who don't want to do legal topics but want to do fun Twitch stuff, like I'm hoping to get Lady Rackets on the Twitch stream more often. And to do, like stupid song parodies and stuff like that on there, as well as video gaming. And then we'll keep this channel focused on the law stuff. So please subscribe to me on Twitch. That would really help out. And growing both of these platforms is super fun and like incredibly humbling. I thank you guys so much for doing that, by the way. Okay, Andrew Gluck says, would you say that libertarianism is just a kecked version of being a moderate? No, not at all. Clay says, I play Fallout 4. I'll let you play Dogmeat if you want to Twitch together. I played like 20 minutes of Fallout 4 and got tired of it. I hate all these games that have intro tutorials. I hate them. I hate that. I don't want a tutorial. I just want to start killing things. Let's Twitch stream right now. Yes, we will transition to Twitch from here. So if you want to carry on the party, we will Twitch stream something. What should we play, Corollas? Should we play Warhammer Total War 2? Or should we play Vermintide? Or should you guys make fun of me losing at DBZ? I don't care. Let me know. Let me know. But yes, we will transition over to the Twitch stream as soon as I get some food. So it'll probably be like a 10-20 minute delay. But I've got to eat because I'm drinking more than my not having eaten since like 4 o'clock body can take. It's in the description. It's in the description. Samuel Oliverio. It's in the check me out on section of the description. It's the bottom one. Twitch.tv /Rekieta Law. I can post it to chat. I wonder if the auto mod will prevent me from posting it since it's a link. But Twitch.tv. Whoa. Rekieta Law. I think I spelled that right. Yeah, Twitch stream. Also, Men of Tanith, do you want to live forever? Tanith first and only. Speaking of which, look at this, guys. For you friends of Gaunt's Ghost, I got the special edition Gaunt's Ghost for Tanith for the Emperor. I need to read it. I need time. I've got so many Warhammer books that I haven't read. Tanith first and only. Would you represent someone from another state, Illinois, for example? I cannot represent you in court. I cannot provide legal advice in the court sense, but it depends on what the issue is. If it's a civil matter, there are points that I can help out and stuff like that. But a personal goal of mine, you guys can help me make this happen or not. If you're another attorney watching, I am looking to build a network in 50 states because I have lots of people asking me legal questions. So I'm looking to have attorneys in each state that I can confidently refer people to for their legal issues. And so if you are an attorney who happens to see this, in a state and would like to be part of that referral partner process, please contact me personally and we'll talk about how to arrange things. But I would love to be able to refer people and have them bring legal questions to live streams and stuff like that, or to me personally, and have me get them competent representation in the state that they're in. So if you have a legal question in Illinois, certainly send it to me and I will try and get you hooked up if I can't help you. Hamilton Burger says, donate to Asterios' Patreon. That is asterios.com/Patreon. Wait. Patreon.com/Asterios. Don't get that wrong. Keck wants to Total Warhammer. I really want to play some Total Warhammer too, so let's do that. Gaunt's Ghost is amazing. Deep Slant. Don't sleep on that. I won't. I've just got to finish my Fred Rush. I'm reading Castellan Crow's backstory here. Look at that title. This is beautiful. I'm reading that right now, and as soon as I finish it, I'll probably go to the Gaunt's Ghost. I effing love Gaunt's Ghost. Have you read Aaron Dembski's Night Lords trilogy or Cadian Blood? I read the first of the Night Lords trilogy. I haven't read the rest. Which chapter of the Space Marines is best? There is a correct answer. Oh, gosh. I love Salamanders, man. I really do. You're talking Loyalist Marines, I go with Salamanders. Oh, Kid Corolla says Salamanders also. You just need 30 grand for a website. I'm working on a website. It's taking a long time because I am not a technology. Don't follow the Games Workshop Money Pit. I don't. I follow the Black Library Money Pit. I've never been able to afford the time for the tabletop game. But if you notice, all the books behind me are Warhammer books, and they're all special editions. So, Mike Leon, do you have a favorite Space Marine chapter? My favorite chapter, of course, is Salamanders. Man, I like Salamanders. My favorite Space Marine, I think, is Nathaniel Garrow, right? Which is a 30K reference. Man, as the Grey Knight, as the first Grey Knight, he is freaking cool. Any progress or further thoughts on the idea of doing some kind of gaming stream? Yes, I do a gaming stream on Twitch. We just talked about that. Sorry. Go to Twitch. It's in the description. You can go there. I'll be live streaming in like 20 minutes. I gotta eat or I'm going to die on my feet here. Do you have a P.O. box? I'll send you Cadian Blood and the Night Lords trilogy. Oh, buddy. Hold on. Was the Night Lords trilogy a special edition? Sexy pose coming in. Just a second. Hold on just a second. Sorry, guys. I'm going through all my special editions. What was it? Is this? Wow. This one? I already have it, buddy. I already have it. I just haven't gotten around to reading past Soul Hunter. I read Soul Hunter before it was in the special edition, but I do have it. If there's a special edition released by Black Library, I believe I have it. It's kind of shameful. But Cadian Blood, I do not have. I do not have Cadian Blood. So if you want to send me that, I would happily read it. I don't have a P.O. box. You can actually just send it to my office. You can find that on my Rekieta Law Facebook page, or you can contact me personally. But I mean, I'd tell you, it's 2015 First Street South, Suite 130, Wilmer, Minnesota 56201. Just, it's weird to tell you. But yeah, if you need me to write that down for you, let me know. Okay. Let's see. You should go on Real Nerd Hours for a Warhammer themed podcast. You know, I should. I'll happily go on a podcast or on the Denzel podcast to talk about all sorts of nerdy stuff. But I should reach out to him. Nick isn't wearing a belt. This is slow lawyer stripping. Take the Dockers off next. I don't wear Dockers, buddy. These are Tommy Bahama jeans. Here is offering a scrawling when he owned the tome. Yeah. Okay, guys. I'm going to end the stream now. Follow me on Twitch. Hop over to the Twitch stream if you want the action to continue. I've set up a second monitor finally, so I can actually monitor the Twitch chat while playing. But yeah, should be fun. Thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna blank out the screen. I really appreciate it, of course, and thanks for the live stream, of course. We do these live streams every single Friday. So every Friday, 11 p.m., whatever the topic du jour may be, let's, I have fun with them. And I hope you guys do too. Anyway, thanks for watching.